Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachaari Yamuna Tiravanachaari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupada Paramam Sabri Vajrakacharya Ashtotara Shattasri Srimad Bhakti Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shattasri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 8, The Lord Slays the King of the Demons, Text 24. I think he read this actually yesterday. Yeah. He read this verse and purport yesterday. So what should we do? So we'll chant this, and I'll read this, and then we'll just move on to 25. Okay. Alakshito now patitaha patangamo yata Nṛsiṁhadeva so suras tada na tad vichitram Kalu Sattvadamani Swa Tejasa Yo Nu Parapibat Tamaha Alakshito now Patita Patangamo Yata Nṛsiṁhadeva so surastada Natad vichitram kalu sattvadamini Satejasayo nuparab pibattamaha Alakshitogna patita patangamo Yata Nṛsiṁhadeva so surastada Natat vichitram kalu sattvadamini Satejasayo nupura pibattamaha Alakshitogna patita patangamo Yata Nṛsiṁhadeva so surastada Natad vichitram kalu sattvadamini Satejasayo nupura pibattamaha Okay, translation. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Just as a small insect falls forcefully into a fire, and the insignificant creature becomes invisible, when Hiraṇyakaśipu attacked the Lord, who was full of effulgence, Hiraṇyakaśipu became invisible. This is not at all astonishing, for the Lord is always situated in pure goodness. Formerly, during creation, He entered the dark universe and illuminated it by his spiritual effulgence. Right, so we're going to text 25. Thereafter, the great demon Hiraṇyakaśipu, who was extremely angry, swiftly attacked Nṛsiṁhadeva with his club and began to beat him. Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, however, captured the great demon along with his club, just as Garuda might capture a great snake. 26. O Yudhishthira, O great son of Bharat, when Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva gave Hiraṇyakaśipu a chance to slip from his hand, just as Garuda sometimes plays with a snake and lets it slip from his mouth, the demigods, who lost their abodes and who were hiding behind the clouds for fear of the demon, did not consider that incident very good. Indeed, they were perturbed. Purport. When Hiraṇyakaśipu was in the process of being killed by the Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, the Lord gave the demon a chance to slip from his clutches. This incident was not very much appreciated by the demigods, for they were greatly afraid of Hiraṇyakaśipu. They knew that if somehow or other Hiraṇyakaśipu escaped from Nṛsiṁhadeva's hands and saw that the demigods were looking forward to his death with great pleasure, he would take great revenge upon them. Therefore, they were very much afraid. So, 27. When Hiraṇyakaśipu was freed from the hands of Nṛsiṁhadeva, he falsely thought that the Lord was afraid of his prowess. Therefore, after taking a little rest from the fight, he took up his sword and shield and again attacked the Lord with great force. Purport. When a sinful man enjoys material facilities, foolish people sometimes think, how is it that this sinful man is enjoying, whereas a pious man is suffering? By the will of the Supreme, a sinful man is sometimes given the chance to enjoy the material world as if he were not under the clutches of material nature, just so that he may be fooled. A sinful man who acts against the laws of nature must be punished, but sometimes he is given a chance to play, exactly like Hiraṇyakaśipu, when he was released from the hands of Nṛsiṁhadeva. Hiraṇyakaśipu was destined to be ultimately killed by Nṛsiṁhadeva, but just to see the fun, the Lord gave him a chance to slip from his hands. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuvamilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidavachalam Pankam Mangaite Gadim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurunditanam Vanchakapadrivishcha Kripasindibhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he comes to the material world from time to time. As he states in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo viditat tataha tvakta deham punarjanma naitimam iti swarjana. He displays his pastimes, he displays his activities, his appearance, and anyone who knows those in truth, they become liberated, go to the spiritual world. And he comes to Vinashaya Chaduskritam to kill the demons and protect the sadhus, protect the devotees. So it's very important that we know who is a demon, or who is a devotee. That's important. But it's also important to know, who is God. Sometimes there's confusion about that. Who is God? Like Srila Prabhupada was one time asked about one person, Sai Baba, and because it says in the Bhagavad Gita that if you worship according to, or if you worship a particular entity, then you'll go to that planet, right? You go to the planet of the demigods or the forefathers and so on. So devotees ask Prabhupada, what happens if, because one devotee, he met somebody who did everything that Krishna devotees do for Sai Baba. They were doing puja, they were doing so many different things, hearing his names and chanting about him and his glories and so on. So Srila Prabhupada said that, yes, it's true that according to your worship you go to a particular planet. So if these particular worshippers of Sai Baba, if they join Sai Baba after life, then that may happen. And then he said, and if he goes to hell, then they'll go to hell with him. It's interesting, but this idea of because an ordinary man who claims to be God is a cheater, and there has to be qualifications behind behind the person's statements. If they just say, "Oh, I'm God," but what are the qualifications? Krishna is said to be Nava Yovanamcha, young, right? Youthful, beautiful, eternally. It's not that at any particular point in time Krishna is not beautiful. He's always beautiful. So if somebody's claiming to be God, they also have to be very beautiful, or else their claim, that's a hole in their argument. Or what to speak of being all present or all powerful and so on. So anyways, in this way there's so many holes in this idea of an ordinary man being God. But in relation to knowing who God is and worshiping properly, I remember there's one devotee, because we're reading about Hiraṇyakaśipu and Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva fighting here. So there's one BBT painting. I don't think it's in this book, but you could look it up. Actually, it would be good if we would have printed that out and passed it around. Maybe someone could look it up on their phone. But it's one painting, and there's Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva. He's like huge, Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, and then he's fighting with Hiraṇyakaśipu. And Hiraṇyakaśipu is very small. But in this painting, for whatever reason, I mean, maybe there's some description here in the Bhagavatam, I don't remember, but Hiraṇyakaśipu is bluish. He's like blue. So you can look up the painting, BBT painting. He's blue and he's fighting with Nṛsiṁhadeva. Nṛsiṁhadeva is huge. And you have a small Hiraṇyakaśipu with a sword and a shield. So one devotee, before he joined, he was a bhakta, he was living outside of the temple, and he saw this picture. And you have the picture? Let me see. Yeah, maybe you could, I don't know if it's difficult for you to pass it around. That'd be good, I think, if you pass it around. So he saw this picture. You could keep the picture in your mind. He saw this picture, and he was thinking that Hiraṇyakaśipu was Krishna. And he was thinking Nṛsiṁhadeva was, whatever, the demon. This was his perception. So what he was doing is he was, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakti, you should offer with love and devotion a leaf, flower, fruit. So he was offering food to Hiraṇyakaśipu. So in this way he was having Hiraṇyakaśipu prasadam. Not real. It's not really prasadam, but anyways. But later on he realized. This devotee is the temple president in Salem, South India now. Gokul Chandra. So it's important that we know who we're worshiping, why we're worshiping them, and that we're doing that in knowledge. So yeah, here it's explaining that Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva and Hiraṇyakaśipu, they're fighting with each other. And at one particular point, Hiraṇyakaśipu, he slipped out of the grip of Nṛsiṁhadeva, and all the demigods, they were just, they were scared. Because if he was to get away, if Hiraṇyakaśipu was to get away, and if he was to know that the demigods were hoping that he would die at the hand of Nṛsiṁhadeva, then Hiraṇyakaśipu would be very angry. They're completely in fear of Hiraṇyakaśipu, the demigods. And then in the next verse, when Hiraṇyakaśipu was freed from the hands of Nṛsiṁhadeva, he falsely thought that the Lord was afraid of his prowess. So then Nṛsiṁhadeva fell into illusion. Or of course, he was always an illusion, but he thought that, oh, Nṛsiṁhadeva, he's afraid of me. And it seems to be, the emotions seem to be going back and forth, because in the next verse, it explains how Nṛsiṁhadeva was fearful. How Hiraṇyakaśipu was fearful. So in this way, he was at one point thinking, oh, Nṛsiṁhadeva's so scared of me, I'm so powerful. And then at the next moment, he was scared. So it's going back and forth here. But then there it says, thereafter, after taking a little rest from the fight, he took up his sword and shield and again attacked the Lord with great force. So they continued their fight. And it's coming to a closure very soon. We will hear how the fight ends very soon, tomorrow. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that we see that in the world, and sometimes people wonder, it seems that sinful people who are, just really immoral people, seems that they're enjoying so much the world. They have so many facilities and they're enjoying life. And a pious person is suffering. And as Srila Prabhupada explains that by the will of the Supreme, a sinful man is sometimes given a chance to enjoy the material world as if he were not under the clutches of material nature. So he compares this to, in the fight between Nṛsiṁhadeva and Hiraṇyakaśipu, Hiraṇyakaśipu having a little freedom. He has a little freedom, temporary freedom, before the closure of the fight. So similarly, if one thinks that they will be successful, that they will be happy, that they will be victorious without God, without connection to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then this is foolish, and the outcome is clear. It means the outcome is failure. It doesn't work. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, what does he say? Na sukham, na param gatim. What's the last one? Na sukham, no happiness, no perfection, and no supreme goal of life. So for one who acts according to their whims, neglects the orders of Krishna, there's no perfection for them. There's no attaining the goal of life. One doesn't get anything of value. So in this way, Hiraṇyakaśipu and his particular mentality, you could say that it could be seen in the present world. People are thinking they're so powerful and important and so on, but just in a matter of short time, everything that they've built up and everything is just defeated. There's no real achievement. Of course, for a devotee, if whatever they work for, whatever they struggle for in Krishna consciousness, whatever advancement they make, that is to their eternal benefit. And they will, upon achieving success, go to the spiritual world, and there's eternal benefit there. So for the materialists, they struggle very hard, and they may achieve some things, but ultimately it's not of any eternal benefit. Whereas the devotees, they also struggle, they also suffer, but for a good purpose, and they attain full success. Just like around the world, different places, there's all of these what do you call archaeological findings. This is 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and you have all the tourists, they're walking through. Oh, very interesting. Right? They see these are some pots that they made in this very old civilization, all different types of pots and different statues. So many statues they found of different personalities. And if you think, and all the tourists walking through those museums, they're looking at them, they have no idea who those personalities are. I mean, if they look at them, but at the particular time, these statues were of great importance. They're probably outside of official buildings and big political leaders and kings and queens, and but in this way, we could see it's just temporary. I mean, in some of these museums, they have even it's kind of spooky, a little kind of strange in a sense, but they have like a glass and they have like a corpse there. It means like like a skeleton, and the tourists are going by and looking, and it's interesting because none of them are. I mean, I would say none of them because who knows what people are thinking, but the tendency in material existence, okay, they see all these statues and all these old artifacts and this whole, skeleton. But still, as the Bhagavatam says, they see, but they don't see. What's the Sanskrit for that? Yeah. They see, but they don't see. So, in other words, by looking at all these artifacts, when to speak of the skeleton, they think, okay, well, time is passing, time's continuing, and at one particular point, okay, what's the point of it all? So we learn from the Bhagavatam that instead of following in the footsteps of Hiraṇyakaśipu, instead of following in the footsteps of foolish materialists, we should follow in the footsteps of saintly people, of the sadhus, follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. He's chalked out a very clear path. And achieve something worth achieving. Namely, we're striving for Krishna Prema, love for Krishna, and eternal life in the spiritual world. So these are some thoughts in relation to this. Does anybody have any question? Yes.
I could ask, you said that the materialists suffer and the devotees suffer. Well, one can ask, why do devotees suffer? I can understand why the materialists, but why do the devotees need to suffer? Krishna's in the heart giving enlightenment.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, thank you. Well, one reason that the devotees are put through suffering, because we see there's many great devotees, like Prahlad Maharaj. Of course, he was transcendental, but he was being not only threatened to death, but they were trying to kill him in so many different ways that they read about. I don't know if anyone's counted. Did anyone count how many ways was listed? That'd be interesting to count, but there was at least, I would say maybe 20 ways they were trying to kill him. Maybe, I think. Anyways, we could check. But in so many ways, we see in history, devotees, Pandavas, are put through so much suffering. So one reason is that Krishna, through the medium of the devotees, teaches the world how to deal with suffering, how they should see suffering. If you give suffering to a materialist or you give suffering to an atheist, they don't know how to deal with it, they don't know how to cope with it in a God-conscious way or in a spiritual way or in a transcendental way. They see things wrongly. But if you give suffering to a devotee, then they teach the world how to process that, how to deal with that, how to be transcendental to it. So that's one way. That's one reason. Another reason is that sometimes suffering is given by Krishna to relieve the devotee from any tinges of desires, separate desires for enjoyment. Because if one has some tinges of desire for enjoyment in this world, if there's some suffering given, then they think, all right, well, I don't know how much enjoyment's here. And they will turn to Krishna. So that's another reason. But as stated in the Sadhu Sangha in the third canto, 25th chapter, starting from verse 20, 27, Prabhu coined this Sadhu Sangha. There's happens to be 8 verses dealing with the sadhu. And Kapila starts by saying that attachment to this world is the cause of suffering. So take that attachment to sadhus. You should transfer that attachment, and that opens the door for liberation. So then the question, who's a sadhu? So then it describes tolerance, friendliness, and different qualities. But later on, describing the sadhu, Kapila says that the sadhus, they don't suffer like ordinary people suffer. Because they are absorbed in hearing and chanting about Krishna, they're transcendental to that, and they don't suffer like ordinary people suffer. Yeah. So those are some things. I don't know if you want to add something. Or if somebody else has... Does anybody else have any other questions? Or yes. Okay.
I have a question.
All right, so Victor first, then Aparna, and then our biggest listener online, steady listener.
Yes, I can wait, Prabhu, no problem.
Yes.
So what you just explained sounds like Buddha's teaching as well, and Lord Buddha is an incarnation of Lord Krishna, that life is suffering, and the only way to get out of suffering is to get out of life. So as long as we're here in this material world, we're gonna suffer. But Buddha and Krishna have slightly different overall end goals. Yeah, Krishna is Krishna. Buddha is...
I mean, with Buddha, he came for a particular reason. People were killing a bunch of animals in the name of the Vedas, and they were just eating them, enjoying, So he came to stop all that and to preach nonviolence. So there's a whole reason why he came historically. Then Shankaracharya came, and there's a whole history. But in terms of Buddha, the teachings, he says that, okay, all life is suffering, right? And what are the suffering caused by? It's caused by desire. Okay, so what is the idea? Okay, well, just get rid of desire, right? But, okay, we say life is suffering. We say that. Material life is suffering. And the cause is not, we don't just say desire, because you cannot get free from desire. We say it's material desire. There's a difference between spiritual desires and material desires. So the idea is to get free from material desires. And as Lord Buddha says, okay, well, how do you get free from desires? And you follow this whole lifestyle, right? So we say, okay, get free from material desires by following the path of Bhakti Yoga, which the whole goal is completely different than the goal of Buddhism, like traditional Buddhism. Of course, there's so many different types of Buddhism now, but the kind of common goal, like you merge, right, into nothingness. I talked to one Buddhist lady about that at I was in high school and I was attending one college class, world religions class. And devotees came in, Giriraj Gopal and Tota Gopinath. I was associating with them already, so they came in. It's nice to hear them. But different speakers were coming in, and I was questioning them, and I was talking with one Buddhist lady, and yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to try to, wrap your mind around, certain concepts within Buddhism, like the goal of nothingness and how it works and why do that. And all right,
I just want to,
yes, sure.
before we move on to another topic, life is suffering. Well, what if I don't accept that? What if I don't accept that premise that life is suffering? You say you're suffering, but it's because you've set up a false premise, that you have an expectation that there's a state where you never suffer. I say that's just that's a dream. It's like wishing, but there's Santa Claus or something, and I'm going to get everything I want. It's going to come down the chimney. I mean, give me a break. I accept that there's suffering. You are in anxiety because you don't expect there to be any suffering. I know there's suffering. If I can break 50%, I got some happiness, I got some suffering, I'm going to get old and drop dead. That's life. So I'm not really suffering. I've just resigned myself. This is the way it is. I don't have this false expectation, so I don't have the anxiety when misery comes. That's just baked in to existence. If I don't expect, if I set out, and I'll be done, that happiness means I've got to have $50 million. If I don't get $50 million, I'm not happy. Well, what if I expect to make the medium income? I'm going to make $50,000, and that's it. So I'm not in anxiety about making $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, if one is, a lot of people, they settle for all different types of forms of happiness. But if we think deeper in the sense that, okay, we all understand the general forms of happiness found in this world. Everybody has experience, everybody. But the question is, well, what if there is this higher forms of satisfaction, higher forms of happiness? And what people tend to do is they just kind of write it off without any investigation, which we would say that's not smart, just to write something off. Like if I was to comment on the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, there's so many verses here, there's so many purports, there's a whole theme going on in the seventh canto. Now if I was to comment on it, like give my opinions or my whatever, without reading it, that would be considered strange. It's like, well, how can you just, or what to speak if I was just to say it's just all bogus, it's all just useless, whatever is in here is just useless in the seventh canto. Of course it's not. But people do that. They just write things off. Oh, well, I know what's happiness, and, like David Rita Swami. It's funny. He has some interesting stories, but when he first was coming to Krishna consciousness, he said he didn't want anything to do with the devotees, but he started reading Prabhupada's books, and he really enjoyed Prabhupada's books. But he said that him and his friends, New Yorkers, academic guys, they sit around, and they said that they would watch the television screen without the volume. They would just kind of guess, what's going on. It was kind of like an intellectual. He said he was doing that. And he said that he saw some devotees come on the screen, Hare Krishnas, brahmacharis. And then he looked and he's like, oh, let's see what these guys have to say. And he turned up the volume. And then the devotees were talking about, yes, you could get supreme happiness and joy and bliss, ananda, and then Devamrita Swami and his buddies, they were joking around and they said, oh yeah, sure. They said if they want to know what ananda is, they have to come to one of our parties, So he was just kind of scoffing at the devotees' claims for happiness and so on. So Devamrita Swami said but he eventually started the process of chanting, and usually people start with one round or whatever, but he started chanting. He said he would lay in his bed and he'd have his bead, japa bead there, and he would chant one bead. That's how he started. But yeah, people, they make fun of, they scoff, but they don't investigate. So we wouldn't say that's intelligent, that's not smart. And an intelligent person also, isn't it intelligent to at least investigate this idea of, okay, maybe there is a perfect happiness. So that's what the Srimad Bhagavatam claims. Now, we don't say that you have to accept that blindly. There's a process. You could engage in the process. Rupa Goswami makes claims that if you engage in bhakti yoga, there's benefits that can be achieved. 6 benefits, and one of them is it destroys all suffering. So that could be investigated, that could be experimented with and seen. So you should try it. Chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, you have something to say?
Just one thing. We constantly read periodically how the importance of association, just like in Sadhu Sangastika. And, it's so nice. We hear the stories from the Sankirtan devotees, how they met this one, and then someone was receptive, they got a book, and they came back after reading the book, and they come to the lounge. Of course, it's not true of everybody who meets a devotee, but someone who is somewhat curious or somewhat receptive, they'll be attracted by the nature of the devotee. There's something there. There's some peace. There's some joy. There's some quality that at least intrigues them, so that they be more curious and to investigate. And that's really kind of an essential factor. And I'm thinking back to when Prabhupada started the movement, and it was all, Prabhupada. There was a certain number of people who became attracted to him and his qualities, and of course his speaking and the words, and especially when I began chanting. That's such a key element, because as soon as you chant, then you experience something that deepens your faith, even a little bit, enough to keep going. So that's the difference. It's a whole different kind of pleasure. So many people can just write it off. It's like when you go to Harinam, when we used to go every Friday night to Harinam, I remember, it sticks out of my mind. You meet all kinds of people down there, they're interacting, And there's a certain amount of homeless guys, and we were chanting, we had our sign. I think you still see the evidence of it. Yeah. And one homeless guy just couldn't take it. He said, he's in misery, and what are you guys so happy about? And he punched I
remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah.
He punched a hole in the sign.
It's still there, the mark.
I know. So, you find a whole spectrum of reactions, and then other people that are curious, they stay in, and other people, want to talk to you. So it's all a question of association.
Yeah, it's a great point that people become attached to Srila Prabhupada. It's interesting because Kapila Dev says you have to transfer the attachment from this world to a sadhu. And the devotees, they transferred their attachment from this material world to the attachment of Srila Prabhupada, and this opened the doors of liberation. They went on the path of bhakti. But it's interesting how, it's interesting how if somebody's seeking, then Krishna will guide them in certain ways. I'm just remembering I was there in Turkey, and I was in Ankara, which there's no center in Ankara. I went to Istanbul and Ankara, but in Ankara there's no center there. There's devotees, and there's some initiated devotees, and they meet at their homes and things. But they arranged one program where there was some new people who came. and I met this guy there, and he's been coming around for a few times, associated with the devotees. And I spoke with him, and he was telling me how he started looking into religion. And then after looking into religion, he started looking into philosophy, and he started really kind of searching. And then he found the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and he started, and then he looked up ISKCON. And in this way he was searching, and then he found the devotees there in Ankara, and he started attending the programs. And he identifies himself as a Vaishnava. His father's Muslim, his mother's not as strict as his father. Of course, there's a lot of followers of Islam there. But at one particular, in that he's getting his mother to read Bhagavad Gita, and at one particular point, he said that he spoke with his brother, who lives in the same house. It's father, mother, and two brothers. And this was his older brother. So he started talking to his older brother and said, you know, I read the Bhagavad Gita and I actually identify as a Vaishnava. And his brother said, oh, that's very interesting. And he said, you know, come into my room. So then he came into his room, his older brother's room, and his brother took off the shelf a Bhagavad Gita. And he said, I actually identify as a Vaishnava as well. And he said, but I identify as a Sri Vaishnava, you know, from South India. So it's interesting, you have two of these brothers, and he didn't know about it, you know, it was just, one's identified as a Sri Vaishnava, one's identified as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, and Ankara, you know. So in this way, you know, Prabhupada's books are very important for people who are searching, and there are people like that. You know, we should always remember there's people like that. It's not everybody's, you know, we haven't reached that point in Kali Yuga yet, where there's not any searchers. There's searchers still. All right, so yes, you.
Why do demons exist? And if Krishna created this world, why did he put into us the desire to enjoy independently?
Well, when we say demons, it doesn't mean somebody with, like, you know, horns and a tail. It means like someone against God or against the supremacy of God. Competitor.
Why do
yeah,
we
I understand. So it's important when we think of demons, we think of them in that way, that it was someone against God, against the supremacy of God. So then you say, okay, why do such people exist? Well, I mean, within the living entity, free will exists. So Krishna gives us free will. He gives us an opportunity. If we want to forget him, if we want to go against him, if we want to turn our back on him, then he allows that. And once we do that, then there's a whole, you could say, identity that we adopt, called the false ego. We identify with the body and as a separate enjoyer and controller and all that. So it's just based on free will. It's not that Krishna is forcing particular. It's not like he's choosing. Okay, you soul, you're a demon, and you soul, you're a devotee. Yeah. Yeah, but it's the living entity's desire.
Why would he give us free will if it's so harmful? Why not just force us to, you know, stay
Well,
there and dance with him?
Well, as you like to quote Srila Prabhupada's saying that you quote often, which is a good quote from Srila Prabhupada, so many wonderful quotes of Prabhupada, but he says that Krishna, he doesn't want, you know, to be loved. He doesn't want to force someone to love them, not like by the force of like a revolver, you know, oh, love me. But he just wants it to be natural, you know, choice. So that's a basic idea. There's many books written about it, and essays and seminars, and that's a basic idea. All right, online.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, may I?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You're most kind. Dandavat Pranams Prabhu. During your class, I heard you saying that God, because He is God, He never gets ugly. And this reminded me of God, of the principle related to God, which is God, because He is God, He never gets old.
Yeah.
So based on all of this, my exact question is, why is it that we find in the Bhaktivedanta purports of Srila Prabhupada declaring that God is the oldest of all living entities? That is my question.
Well, Krishna has Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karnam. He has a body which is eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. He's the cause of all causes, right? Ishvara Parama, supreme controller. So, but just because, also in the Brahma Samhita said he's the most ancient person, right? Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanamcha. But even though he's the most ancient person, he is Navayovanamcha, always youthful, always fresh youth. So this is the special power of Krishna, that although he's the most ancient person, he's able to remain youthful. And similarly, his associates are also like that. In the spiritual world, there's no old age, there's no disease, there's no death, none of these things. So, yeah, that's the idea.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you very much. You're most kind.
I wouldn't mind getting old as long as I look and feel like an 18-year-old.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they say, the scientists, because they say, okay, we'll create a situation in which there's no death. You just live on. And then there was some article in which it was describing, okay, well, what's the next problem? Because you could say you could just live on for eternally in this material world. Then what would be the next problem? What do you think? Boredom. Yes, exactly. Boredom. You know, how many times can you go to France, right? Or whatever, however you say it. How many times can you go to France and see the big rats there, you know, running around? That's apparently people say. I don't know. One devotee told me he went there and he was like spooked out, and it was like huge rats, like huge, you know. And another thing that was spooky about it is that he was telling me that they're not scared of humans, you know. He tried to, like, you know, with the stick or something, and the rat wasn't scared, you know. So anyways, I mean, came after him. But yeah, but anyways, all right. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.